Stream looks good. All right, cool. How you doing, Bray? So yes, the first portfolio review is Tashan. I don't know how to say your last name. Attawia, Waya, maybe. Right here. Um, I think I will put me here somewhere for now. If I'm blocking things, just let me know. I can hide myself. There's a small chance that my partner is locked out of the apartment. And in that case, I may have to run downstairs. So, yeah. But let's take a look at this portfolio. So, environment artists, hailing from the UK, Birmingham. We've got what looks like a little diorama, or would you call it a life study? Reed, what's up, man? How you doing? Or like a Cambodian temple. We've got this music studio, a Jeep. The music studio also says work in progress on it, so there's something to keep in mind. Dude, still life? I think it's still life. Life? I think still life. I think still life is what you would call us from like back in the day. Man, I feel the cough's extra strong today for some reason. So pardon me if I mute my mic. But yeah, so we've got a still life, or a like a little scene. We've got a temple. We've got a music studio that's labeled work in progress, a Jeep, Han Solo's blaster, and a compass. Wanting to be an environment artist, I know that there's not really any not any details outside of that in the review. Let me just look here real quick. Just pull this to the side. Also, the portfolio reviews are kind of closed currently. The Just because we've got a huge queue, it goes all the way into October. So to make sure we don't have people queuing, getting a job, and then I get to them. That's always funny. Yeah, they fill up super fast. But if we look at the still life, this is 9 months ago, and I actually there's some noise on the image itself. I actually really like. There's anything that noise can do, as long as it's not too strong, it can kind of unify everything, right? And so that can be a nice feature. But let's see if we can't. So we only have one image on here. In this piece, I wanted to practice making props and materials, so I attempted to remake this still life. Haha! I was right. Um, yeah, I think the only thing that feels kind of strange to me. So there's two things. The outside world, whenever you have a window, and that it requires you to sell it, right? I would see if there's whenever you have this opportunity, uh, we'll call it an opportunity, not like a downfall of like trying to deal with a window, right? So what we can look at this as an opportunity to take, I don't know, like a mega scans tree and just the standard sky, and just get the tree real close to the window, because then you can get some really interesting shadows from the tree. The other thing I was going to say is the scale of the wood grain that's on the window frame and like on the seal here. Um, Let me just switch this thing real quick. But yeah, so we've got the frame dealing with windows on the outside, like the outside world when you have a window. And then I think the only other thing that felt a bit strange to me was the apple that's cut in half. Um, there's an opportunity to have like a knife here that explains how it was cut in half. But mainly, I'm looking at the way it's textured and the edge um, on that frame. I know this is 9 months ago, and the image is a little lower res, so take that as you would. Uh, but overall, I think this is a great way to be practicing just working on materials, modeling and materials. You can rip apples in half. This is true, but then that ripping apple in half would not look that clean, right? Yeah, this apple might look a little smaller than these ones in the bowl. Maybe it wasn't hungry. Went for the small one, you know? So this has a bit of an apocalypse type of vibe just because of the tone on the outside. But I think we've commented enough on that scene. This Cambodian temple is using Quixel Bridge. So this is actually a really good exercise for just thinking about composition and how you read an image, right? And building those frames to be as interesting as possible. So let's see, making Cambodian Temple, my goal was to use different asset libraries such as Quixel Bridge and assets from the Unreal Store to practice my composition, lighting, and world building skills. Hmm. If it gets too noisy, just mute it. Yeah, I have a I have a button here. I should probably use that for. Nice. Yeah, I have a button press for it. Okay. Hey, Jordan, how you doing? So with this scene, I think I'm not sure which is supposed to be the main shot, and I think there's the downfall for a lot of environment artists, especially early on, is making your environments too large, and I think that carries through into how we make environments as we continue forward into our careers as well. And when you're not even like junior anymore, it's very easy to. It's kind of like your eyes are bigger than your stomach type of vibe. It's like your creativity is larger than your production time. Um, and it becomes easier when you have an asset library to work with, right? So, given that, I would say this environment feels a little large, and it looks like you were searching for angles or camera shots uh, versus having a frame that you built to with like the goal on the storytelling and whatnot. Killer dude, dope username by the way. Um, so we already have portfolio set up for this stream, but I would suggest you go and hang out in the Discord. You can sign up there when it's open. There's a review link as well, and we can. Of course, I review people's work on every other. When there's a portfolio stream, the stream after, I look at people's work in the Discord. So that might be an opportunity as well. But yeah, stick around. Maybe we can learn something together. Um, yeah. So this shot up top here, I would say this is. I mean, it says main shot. So this rock feels a little low res for being very close. Some of the ways you can um, combat that is use depth of field, because I like the idea of foreground and midground and background, and using those as layers to kind of give you depth to your scene. And with these being so close to the camera, this gives you the opportunity to like blur them out or use depth of field to kind of give you more of a sense of the depth and size of the scene you're working with. The other thing I would suggest doing is thinking about the camera angles that you would see when you're normally like using your eyes. So like the height of like your average person, and that view is a view that we all normally see, right? So when you build a view like that, it can be you have to work a little extra hard to make compositions look interesting, because we've all seen that angle or view for most of our lives. Now, child's view, like low camera or higher camera, or in places where you can't normally get to, like the rooftop area, those can be areas where you can really push the composition. So that's just a note on framing and composition. The other thing I would look at is figuring out your light direction. Right now, everything you're seeing is mostly in shadow with the lighting coming from the right. It's just hitting on the side here. So you end up not really getting a sense of shape and form when things are in shadow. So for example, these pillars and the wall behind it, um, those don't separate themselves from each other very easily. But if the light was over here shining this way, you'd get the shadow of the pillars on the wall, and everything starts to become a little bit more uh, would you say volumetric or like easier to read? Ambient occlusion can help with this as well. But when you're in shadow, things really flatten out. Also, the same goes for when things are all in direct light and there's no shadows. You also get a really flattened out image, right? Dynamic, yeah, Vince, I would say that's a good word for it. Yeah, dynamics. That's perfect. It's a perfect word for that. The only other thing I'd mention on this scene is the noise. So the sky's fine. Sky feels pretty good. There's some stuff that could be done up there with the clouds to try and draw your eye to places. Right now, I end up looking here and here. But first, I actually end up looking here. But the noise ratio, I think, is the stuff I want to look at, and it's mainly with things like the grass down here, the foliage. So the grass is catching all of the edge lighting, and it ends up becoming very noisy. So you're gonna want to watch out for that type of scenario. These grass blades, I'm not sure if they're geometry or not. They kind of look like they're modeled and not just textures. So that could become an issue if you want to try and negate those edge highlights. You would just basically need to, in the shader, point the normals upwards. That way they're all kind of getting lit from one direction. Yeah, so you could do a spherical normal trick where basically you map a sphere, a sphere's normals going in a spherical shape to the grass planes, and that'll give it kind of like a voluminous. You're essentially volumizing the normals of the grass geometry. Building it in the shader tends to give you a more reusable result where you don't have to be like hand authoring every geometry. You could just do it into the shader itself, but the effect is the same. So yeah, it's just some notes on that. And because the sky is taking up so much space, I guess you would expect it to be showing you a lot more information. But yeah. So wait, when was the? So this was 6 months ago. I actually remember this music studio and some of the comments that we'd made on it before. It looks like you did a pretty good job of like connecting elements and building some more logic into like how stuff, where stuff ends. Like when the wall meets the ceiling, what does that look like? Don't be afraid to like add the enough geometry to get the shapes you're looking for. So you can see like these are very angular. I would just like triple that poly count. Like don't even, LODs will help you. Um, okay, my partner was able to get in, so I don't need to go run downstairs. um, but yeah, it's a cool scene. I think what is really missing is there's not too much of a focus on the materials. You get a little bit of a highlight here on the wood panels in the back for the soundboard, or like the reverb wall, if you want to call it that. Um, but then, like when you look at the speaker, for example, it doesn't have the attention to detail and the material and the roughness that you would expect, especially when you see the fidelity on the tileable wood material here. So it's trying to unify all your materials and really like kind of nail that down. I think when you look at the carpets or the rugs that are hung up to help absorb sound, they're very dark. And normally, Route 1 is saying in chat, maybe it looks a little too clean. I think normally I would say that, but in these types of spaces, they get weirdly clean. Or like they're strangely like sterile. You know what I mean? Maybe there could be a spilled drink that's stained and then was cleaned up. The rug looks, the carpet here looks pretty nice. But yeah, don't be afraid to use a lot more geometry when it comes to building your space. You could probably take all the geometry in here and triple it, and no one would bat an eye. As long as you're using the geometry to better the silhouette or the shapes that you're presenting on the model before texturing. Yeah, and I think when we were looking at the guitar before, like the body could either be smaller or the neck needs to be longer to match the scale. So like making sure your scale reference is good is going to be pretty important. But let's see here. Let's see what else we got going on here. I actually really like this back room, and I think it's where I had a lot of feedback early on. It looks like you went in and added some more details. You've got a crinkled up paper. It feels a little weird that it's as straight as it is while still being crinkled. So like just getting that silhouette to be bent up more would be good. Yeah, I actually think if you were to just focus on the sound room, the soundboard room, or like the director's room, and that was the story, and then you show the room up here, maybe like all the lighting in the back is lower. Hey, Madhu. You show all the lighting in the back being a little bit cooler and kind of subdued, you'd be in a really good spot for like getting that contrast between the two spaces. But overall, I think it's an improvement from what it was when we saw it in the review originally. I think it was the Discord critiques. The rug under the drum kit would be good. But this looks, yeah, there's some of those logics, right? It's just being able to absorb some of the, like any of the rattling or like just understanding how these rooms are used. I totally agree that I think this should be the main shot. But it's really cool. Yeah, let's see what we got on the so we got a Jeep as well. So you're diving into vehicles a little bit. So this is 3 months ago. And I think this Jeep, to me, it highlights the so making sure that you're adding enough geometry, so you're not getting really hard angles, getting it smooth and beveled wherever you would expect it to be kind of rounded in real life. Those are really important. And then I think what this vehicle's highlighting the most is your where your current skill set is with texturing. PBR wise, I don't think it's just not there yet. I would say you're maybe like, I don't know how would I say that. You're just starting to scratch the surface of what PBR can do for you. But there's some continuity stuff I would look into. Is like, is this a stream down here? How, like the mud that's on the vehicle, making sure the mud kind of matches the color of the environment that it's placed on. Understanding what the surface of paint on a vehicle, like right now, it's quite noisy in the normal. The reality is I guess the paint is going to be pretty smooth, right? And what's going to break that up is if there's mud buildup on there. Um, yeah, and like these edge damage details are pretty uniform. Thinking about where those happen and when they happen, and how extreme they become is also going to be a key thing. Yeah, baby in chat is saying make sure that the scratching on the texture matches better. Remember, it is paint, so it'll start to flake as well. Also, the red is a little too Rue eye drawing. I don't know, too eye drawing. So vehicles and guns will like two toughest hard surface things. Yeah. So if you want to be an environment artist, I don't think you don't actually need to focus on vehicles at all, really. If you need vehicles in your scene, you could probably just pull them off of a marketplace or find them in free libraries. I want to look at this pistol because this is actually a good example of, okay, the camera is really close to the pistol. You're blurring it out quite a bit, so we don't really get to see a lot of it. I typed too quickly. It's okay, man. See, the materials here are more engaging than the materials here. And this is a good example of planning for execution and then executing versus executing and then building the shot. So for example, the goal was to build the pistol, right? And then you're like, okay, how do I frame it? And that's totally that makes total sense as to how that ends up happening sometimes. See, it looks even more so here. It looks better. But so the sand on the grip is pretty cool. But I think it really highlights that you didn't plan for the camera to be this close to the pistol, right? I would say if the camera's going to be getting this close, you could go way higher poly, um, just to like actually model these in, add more edges here, bevel things, extrude that piece out versus having it baked in. Making it look cool is like is key with these kind of main shots. And then there's the technicals behind it, which are like, okay, how do you, was the plan to make it game ready, or was the plan to just make a really cool render? Because if the plan's game ready, then you wouldn't ever frame a game ready asset close like this, right? This looks, let me see if we can, oh dang. Okay, so the camera movement, make sure that happens as you're already, as the camera's started. Oh yeah, see that looks much nicer. But yeah, getting the camera this close, you really want to make sure that you have the geometry to support it, or else it just makes the asset not hold up as well, you know? The blowing effect of the sand is really cool though. See, there's a good 7 seconds that doesn't actually need to be in the video. I think it could literally start here and then focus in on it and then you're good. Or even just panning across it. Right now you're doing a lot of like floating camera movements, which feel very strange to us. Think about cameras whenever you're using them for your sequences. Think about them like they are in real life, because we're so trained to seeing how cameras move in movies. The reality is cameras move on rails in movies, right? Or they're on like a jib or like an arm. So they only move in like one motion, or they move in one motion and then pan at the same time, which can create those curves, but the effect becomes much more natural and grounded. Yeah, the depth of field could be toned down as well. Like, also it looks like the sand that you have on here still has the metalness on it. Wherever the sand is, you don't want to have metal, because now it kind of looks like a gold flake. And it looks like it's okay on the grip because the grip is not metal. But let's see. We get to the final one here. So this one is 2 days ago. And this one looks like you're definitely focusing on materials much more. Resolution's higher. So what I would do is have your reference. I would post reference in here if you have it. The goal is going to be to help us understand how things are put together. So this is all one wood piece first, but then there's like these brackets here. Like there's totally going to be a seam there, right? Like maybe that wood piece and this wood piece meet, and then you have a bracket. How's the bracket connected? What type of metal is this? How is it scratched and aged? What type of wood? What type of finish is on it? With the scratches, a lot of the times the scratches aren't going to be in the normal map. They'll just be in the roughness and maybe the albedo. And as it becomes older, it would age, like you can see on the floor below you, the saturation difference between these two materials. Like just getting the saturation in line with the floor will do a huge number of quality boosts to the asset itself. The overall fidelity on the inside is really nice. This looks really good. I think on this material, the way it's scratched feels a little arbitrary. Like I don't understand why it's scratched the way that it is, or why the scratches are to the scale that they are. And again, don't be afraid to add more geometry if needed. Yeah, and like I was saying with the wood damage, is you probably don't need that in the normal map unless it's like a really deep scratch, you know. Yeah, the image count as well. Like you could probably show this one, and you don't need this one. This one you could keep. You probably don't need this one because you have this one. And this one could actually be in the same frame as this one. You could have them next to each other if you want to show the back. But the back, I would say there's not really a reason to show it unless you're going to show how the hinge is connected, right? So like if I go to the 3D view, we go back here, we don't really get an explanation other than this little cylinder here, how this is actually connected to this, how the lid is connected to the body. And let's see here. Yeah, it's just, let me see your roughness, and then we'll move on to the next portfolio. So roughness wise, I like that you're thinking about where fingerprints happen. I guess this is, no, this is roughness. So this should be the other way around. Fingerprints are going to be darker, and because they're oil based, right? Unless the wood is really reflective. But there needs to be a lot of variety and breakup and detail happening in your roughness versus like your albedo, which I'm guessing in your albedo. Yes, even your albedo doesn't have, like, there's this damage here. That damage should be in your roughness. Oh, no, it's there. Okay, that's good. But I don't see anything happening on this surface. Like, is there any effect for the metal meeting the wood? Those types of details. So I think your modeling is getting better. Your materials are getting better as well. But there's all those little extra details that you can push to try and like just bring it up to that next level of fidelity. And that's really what starts to separate good art from amazing art. Modeling gets really good, and then when the materials get like crazy nice, and there's a lot of variety in your roughness, for example, the materials all of a sudden bring a really good model up above most people's work, in my opinion. It's like when you see someone's work that looks crazy good, it's likely because not only is their framing nice, but their execution on the modeling, and especially the execution on the materials, is like hitting the spot. But yeah, cool. Hopefully that was helpful. It was a deep portfolio review. I tried to cover all the little nuances I could see. And your thumbnails, yes, you need to know that your thumbnails are good. They're interesting. They're uniform. If you wanted to clean it up even further, you don't even need the Unreal logo, but the thumbnails are fine. So, but yeah, thank you for sharing your portfolio.